Steel doesn't warn before it cuts. That's the first rule Zoro learned, and it's the first rule of attitude. You either carve through the world, or the world carves through you. The blade you hold isn't metal, it's mindset. Zoro steps into frame, one hand on Wado Ichimonji. Your thoughts decide your distance, he says. What if the real enemy is the way you speak to yourself? A weak attitude is a dull sword. You hear the quiet threat under it, the kind that doesn't shout, only promises. To win a fight, Zoro doesn't wait to feel ready. He cuts toward the fear, not away from it. Because attitude isn't motivation, it's direction. And Zoro is about to show you the one mindset shift that turns any impossible goal into a straight path. But first, you need to see the moment he almost broke.
Zoro's first cut. The night he almost quit wasn't loud. It was quiet enough to hear his own heartbeat arguing with him. He stood alone on an empty deck, blades resting at his side, the sea swallowing every excuse he tried to make. What happens when the strongest man you know realizes his mind is the only thing pulling him down? Zoro lifts Wado Ichimonji, staring at the reflection he can barely recognize. I wasn't losing to the world, I was losing to what I told myself. On screen, no excuses. The moon draws a thin line across his cheek, like a fault line. He remembers every fight where his body didn't give out, but his attitude almost did. Because attitude isn't positivity, it's command, the inner order you follow before the battle even begins. If your thoughts were a weapon, would you trust yourself to hold them? Zoro breathes once, slow. You don't wait for courage, he whispers. You create it. He locks the grip, shifting from hesitation to decision in a single snap. And this is where your own blade sharpens, right here, watching him choose direction over doubt. A gust of wind slices across the deck. He thinks of his promise to Torina. He thinks of the man he swore to become. He thinks of the version of himself staring back, small, uncertain, breakable. What if the only way forward is to cut down the version of you that hesitates? Zoro steps forward. I'm done negotiating with weakness. One step, another. The world doesn't shift, he does. And as the deck creaks beneath him, Zoro senses something moving behind the mast, a presence he hasn't felt in years, and he tightens his grip, knowing the next moment will decide everything. If it's really you, then draw your blade, now.
The mind that splits the path. The figure steps from the shadows, broad stance, familiar breath, a ghost carved from Zoro's past failures, not a man, a memory with a sword. What if the enemy standing in front of you is the version of yourself that never improved? Zoro doesn't move. He studies the Phantom the same way he studies an opening in combat, cold, disciplined, empty of fear. Show me, he says. Show me the attitude I carried when I was weak. The Phantom lifts its blade slowly, mimicking Zoro's old posture. Too loose, too reactive, a fighter waiting for life to hit first. On screen, old self. Zoro circles, one step, two. That mindset almost killed me, he murmurs. His hand tightens, his breath sharpens. The sea grows still, as if listening. When you face your past failures, do you fight them or flinch from them? The Phantom strikes first, wild, reckless, the exact attitude Zoro once carried. Hope without discipline, effort without conviction, a blade without purpose. Steel crashes, sparks tear through the dark. Zoro holds firm. Your thinking decides everything, he growls, and mine is not the same anymore. For a moment, the Phantom wavers, its outline glitching like a code breaking. Zoro feels something inside him shift. Attitude isn't strength, it's identity. The Phantom suddenly splits, two versions of Zoro, both weaker than him, both attacking from opposite sides. The more you grow, the more past versions of you try to pull you backward. It's never just one enemy, he mutters. It's every thought you never killed. He parries left, dodges right, but one blade slips through, grazing his ribs, a shallow cut, but deep enough to remind him of the truth. What do you do when your old mindset draws first blood? Zoro breathes out. I've seen enough. His steps slow, intent sharpens. He lowers his stance, not defensive, but decisive. I'm cutting all of you down, starting with the most dangerous one.
The cut that redefined you. The weakest phantom rushes first, reckless, desperate, swinging like someone who believes life owes him progress. Zoro doesn't even lift his blade. He sidesteps, calm, letting the strike pass through empty space. That was my old problem, he says, wanting the win without owning the mindset. How many battles do you lose because your thoughts move slower than your goals? The second phantom lunges, sharper, more disciplined, closer to the man Zoro used to be when he thought effort alone was enough. Steel flashes, sparks scatter across the deck like falling stars. On screen, focus first. Zoro deflects clean, turns the blade, and forces the phantom to stumble. You were strong, he admits softly, but you never believed you deserved the finish. The phantom flickers, shaken by the truth more than the strike. What happens when your old identity realizes it no longer controls you? Zoro inhales. 3 phantoms remain, each one a mindset he carried at a different stage of his life. He moves through them with ruthless precision. Cut hesitation, cut self-doubt, cut emotional noise. And then it happens. A phantom blocks his finishing blow. Perfectly. Zoro freezes. This one looks different, stronger, steadier, almost equal to him. So you survived, he murmurs. The phantom nods once. I'm the attitude you tried to bury, the one that believed you'd never be enough. What do you do when the enemy you couldn't beat is the voice still whispering inside you? Zoro draws his final blade, stance lowering. This ends now. He pushes forward 3 steps, 1 breath, and the phantom's posture cracks. A single opening, a straight path. Zoro cuts clean. Silence. The phantom dissolves, leaving only the echo of the lesson. Your attitude decides your direction, long before your sword does. Zoro sheathes his blade, turning toward the sunrise.
The discipline that chooses your future. Dawn bleeds over the horizon, standing the deck in red gold. Zoro stands alone now, no phantoms left, only the weight of the lesson carved into the boards around him. When the noise in your head dies, do you finally hear the path you were meant to walk? The ocean is calm, too calm. Zoro doesn't trust calm. He knows what comes after inner victory, outer challenge. The world tests you the moment you decide to change. He tightens the bandana on his arm, grounding himself. On screen, next step. Attitude isn't what you feel, it's what you do, even when everything feels pointless. He remembers training days where his muscles screamed, where loneliness sharpened him more than any blade. Attitude is everything, because your actions follow whatever your inner voice commands. If your future self watched you today, would he respect your choices? Zoro steps to the rail, eyes scanning the horizon. He senses it again, a shift in the wind, a pressure drop. The feeling right before a real enemy appears. A dark silhouette emerges over the waves. Not a phantom, not a memory, something alive, something watching him, something that felt the moment his inner world changed and came to challenge it. The ship's wood groans, reacting to an approaching presence. Zoro draws 1 blade, slow, controlled. This won't be a fight against who I was. This one's against who I must become. What happens when the world mirrors your inner growth with an enemy strong enough to break it? The silhouette grows clearer, tall, broad, carrying a single curved sword. He steps onto Zoro's deck with the confidence of someone who already believes he's won. Zoro meets his gaze. Then let's see if my new attitude can cut deeper than my old limits. The stranger lifts his blade. I came here, he says, to break the man who thinks mindset is enough.
The cut that proves everything. The stranger's blade gleams, a curved edge designed for single-purpose kills. He steps forward without hesitation, testing Zoro's resolve with silence alone. When the world challenges your new mindset, do you stand firm or fall back into the person you used to be? Zoro doesn't move. His stance is steady, breathing slow, eyes locked. If mindset wasn't enough, you wouldn't be here trying to break it. On screen, prove it. Steel snaps into motion. The stranger strikes first, brutal, clean, exact. The deck shudders beneath the impact. Zoro matches the blow, sparks splitting the dawn. This isn't about strength. This is about control of thought, intention, direction. Your attitude is everything, Zoro mutters, sliding 1 foot back, catching the next strike, because the moment doubt enters, your blade wavers. What does a fighter look like when his mind refuses to break? The stranger presses harder, 3 rapid cuts, each designed to puncture confidence. Zoro parries all 3, calm, precise, no wasted motion, no inner noise. Then the stranger smiles, cold, almost impressed. You really changed. And that's why I'll end you now. Zoro shifts, sudden, decisive. This is his micro payoff. He's not fighting to win. He's fighting to prove the rule he lives by, that attitude shapes outcome before the first strike. Zoro steps inside the enemy's guard. 1 breath, 1 inch, 1 clean opening. He cuts. Silence. The stranger drops his blade, falling to his knees as the sunrise burns across the deck. Zoro sheathes his sword without looking back. If attitude were nothing, you'd still be standing. He walks past the defeated figure, voice firm, controlled. Change your mind, and you change your entire world. If you reached here, you already chose your direction. Comment 1 word, attitude. Subscribe.